All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us again for Coffee with the Coalition. Um, my name is Anesu. I am the Training Events Manager here at IKESA. And today we have a great presentation that will be led by Andrea Gash, and I will get into that in just a second. But just to get us started, a few Zoom tips just to navigate the call today and interact in session. If you need to access any of the captions, what you want to do is just at the bottom of your screen, click that More button, click on Captions, and then Show Subtitles, and then that will produce the subtitles for you. Um, so we know who all is in attendance today. You want to go ahead and display your first and last name and your pronouns so that you can be called on. So in order to change your display name, again, at the very bottom, you will click on the participants button, and then that'll give you the list of participants. You want to find your own name. And this is also where you're going to be able to mute and unmute yourself. So if at any point you need to jump off of mute or if you need to mute yourself, this is where you'll do it. But in order to change your name, you want to click the three dots right next to that, and that will prompt you to rename yourself. Throughout the session, if you have any questions or would like to interact with us, you want to go ahead and use the raise hand button. So again, that is located at the bottom of your screen. You can also utilize the chat box to ask questions. So you can throw any questions in throughout the sessions, and that can be addressed during the question and answer portion. If you have any technical assistance or need any immediate assistance, please reach out to me directly at info@ikesa in the chat, or you can find one of our staff members and message them directly. Again, we will be monitoring the chat, so you can also just throw it in the big chat if there is anything that does come up. And just as a friendly reminder, today's session will be recorded. Um, and so these sessions will be available again through your registration link that you utilized. So if you have to hop off the call at any point today, you will be able to watch this in entirety later on through that registration link. All right, but without further ado, today we'd like to welcome Andrea Gash. She is a speaker who is trained to create very compelling content that's packed with easy to implement action steps. She's been featured on numerous podcasts and webinars. And today she's going to be again leading us through a presentation called Leading from Where You Are. Just during these very uncertain times, I think it's a great time to kind of touch back and really understand where our strengths are and how we can keep the mission going with some of the content that she has today. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it over to Andrea. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. Let me share my screen here.
Stop sharing.
Okay. All right. Give me a thumbs up if that PowerPoint's showing up for y'all. Perfect. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. I am so excited to be here with you all this morning. My name is Andrea Gash, and I live in Franklin, Indiana. My husband is a math professor, and we have a 16-year-old son, which is such a great age. I work for an education nonprofit, and we focus on early literacy, math literacy, and educational quality. Before that, I was a fundraiser for a small liberal arts college for about 10 years. And it was a private college, so fundraising was absolutely critical. I also serve on my local library foundation board. And all that is to say that I understand nonprofits. I know the blood, sweat, and tears that go into everything that you all do. So if no one has told you lately, thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you all are doing. You really are making a difference. But today we are going to take a break from, a little issue here about the advanced sharing. Get rid of that there. All right. Today, we're going to take a break from our jobs and we are going to head to Las Vegas. Las Vegas is my favorite place. My husband and I have been there about 10 times. I love everything about Las Vegas. I love the shows. I love the food. I love the energy. And to me, there's nothing quite like walking on that casino floor and just hearing all the people, all the machines. I just think that energy is really contagious. So today we're going to talk about leading and influencing, no matter what your position or your title may be. Because the truth is, nobody ever has enough authority. They never have and they never will, because organizational life is just too complicated for that. So we have 90 minutes together today, and we are going to utilize some breakout rooms. Now, I have been guilty as well of being in a breakout room and then maybe not participating and spending the time chatting, but I encourage you all to really focus in today and focus in those breakout rooms so that we can make the most of our time together. So let's get started. The first thing that I wanted to do was what I call a check-in with the dealer. And so I was hoping everyone could write how they're feeling right now in the chat. So, for example, my word would be excited. I'm really excited to be here with all of you, but I'm nervous because there can also be technical issues. I'm working on a new computer, a Mac. I'm not a Mac user. So, of course, I'm a little bit nervous about any technical issues that could pop up. So, if you don't mind, just write one word about how you're feeling in the chat. Love that. Tired. I feel that. Thank you. So the reason that we do that is because, let's see if I can change my slide here. See, there we go. So the reason that we do that is because when you take the time to really think about how you're feeling as you're coming into today's training, it really helps you get into that learning mindset. So thank you all for sharing. There we go. There aren't many rules in Las Vegas, but we do have one rule for today. And I know that your jobs consist of many rules and regulations. So rules may be the very last thing that you want to hear about. But I have only one rule for today's discussion. Titles do not matter. It does not matter where your position is in the hierarchy. Today, we're all going to learn to lead and influence, and we're all on the very same level. So my goal is to help you work smarter, faster, and perhaps more importantly, together in cooperation with your colleagues. I want you to walk away from today knowing that you can lead from exactly where you are. And of course, Vegas rules apply. What happens in Vegas will stay in Vegas. We've all been dealt a certain hand, just like at those table games in Las Vegas. But before we can understand our hand, let's go over a little bit of background information. So when you think of that influence, you may not think that you influence very much, but you actually influence every day without even realizing it. Think about who you maybe have influenced already. Did you influence your kids to get them out of bed? Maybe you influenced your spouse, your coworkers. We influence our coworkers all the time without even realizing it. Did you smile at someone today or thank someone that maybe held the door open for you? If so, you influenced them to have a better day. Your attitude and how you treat people is the easiest way to influence people. And you influence people by having a relationship with them. So influencing at work has become a vital skill for everyone at every level because the world is changing. Years ago, there were clear levels of management. You had a boss who had a supervisor, and there were those direct lines of reporting. But it's different now, and organizations are becoming flatter. We're all fulfilling multiple roles at work, and those lines of authority are becoming blurred. We're all leading from example exactly where we are, no matter our title or our position. When you want to influence those around you, you need to get to know them, figure out what they want, build trust, and then work on building cooperation. That's why it's important to not only understand your hand, but also their hand. Your cards are already stacked with expectations. So let's talk about relationship expectations, because before you can be a leader, you really need to take the time to think about the relationships that you're in with those that you're trying to lead. It doesn't matter, again, where your position is in the hierarchy. This does not dictate relationship expectations. And these expectations are about building the foundation. Now, while different positions dictate different responsibilities, they don't dictate the relationship. And while it's true that not every relationship is going to hit the jackpot, it's really important that you understand relationship expectations at work. Work relationships are those connections you form with your colleagues, your coworkers, your supervisors, because all jobs do require interaction at some point. So here are some really common relationship expectations. First, of course, is trust. We all value being open and honest. And this also is about being honest about your mistakes. So, for instance, I'm going to tell you about a big mistake that I made just last November. I am in charge of working with sponsors for our National Summit on Education. It's a huge event. We have over 1,200 people come. It has legislators, senators, governors. It's a really big event. So part of my job is I work with the sponsors after they've agreed to sponsor the event, and I send them sort of a check-in every week saying what I still need from them. And then I also send them an attendee list. But with that attendee list, I gut everything except first name, last name, and organization. So one Friday, I had to email all of the sponsors, and I had some specific information that each different sponsor needed. Then I needed to attach that attendee list, gutted. So I had taken the dogs to doggy daycare, which is where they are right now, or you would be hearing and seeing them. And I had the house all quiet. I had everything laid out in front of me, and I was like meticulously going through each email. About midday, one of my coworkers reached out to me and they asked me if I could add someone to that VIP reception list, the list that has everything on there, including name, email address, cell phone number. So I did. I just popped over to that list, added that person's information, went back to my email. After I finished that email, I hit attach and I hit send. And I knew within 30 seconds that I had attached that VIP list instead of the gutted attendee list. And I think we all know that sick feeling that comes over you. So I tried to do the Outlook recall. I got that dreaded message, Outlook cannot recall. I tried to call the sponsor. They didn't answer. And I knew I had to call my boss. Now, my boss and I, we don't have one-on-ones. We only really talk via Teams. And so we don't have a super close relationship. So I was nervous. But I messaged her and I said, I really need you to call me. And I'm telling you that because I was so open and honest about what happened, she could not have been kinder to me. She said, this happens. It's okay. We'll call the sponsor. And she was right. Later on, that sponsor called me back. They had just been in meetings all day and they deleted that email while they were on the phone with me. And they said they had done something like that before. So they totally understood. But what this did do is it changed the relationship between my boss and I. It really did change the dynamic because she trusts me more and it showed her a lot about my character because I fessed up and I told her when I made a mistake. Another expectation is communication. And of course, this isn't just about talking, but actively listening. Think about those one-on-one meetings. Do you make sure that you're prepared not just to talk, but to listen? Consistency is important because you need to always act in a trustworthy and supportive way. This is also about being consistent with meeting your deadlines and following through with doing what you say you're going to do. Commitment. We all value coworkers who are committed to following those deadlines, rules, and being a team player. If you say you're going to do something on a project, do it. Don't take on part of a project and then miss the deadline. And clear expectations. We all want clear expectations from our roles and our responsibilities, but also for our relationships. And remember, we'll touch on this a little bit later, but if someone doesn't share about their family, their home life, or their hobbies, they actually are telling you what their relationship expectations are. They want to keep that work and home life separate, and that's an important expectation for them. Openness. This is sometimes what I struggle with because this is about encouraging that open communication and feedback, but making sure not to personalize issues. So, as I said before, my boss and I really have a Teams and email type relationship. So, when we do get on a Zoom call to chat, it's straight to the point. There is no, how was your day? How was your weekend? It's just very direct. This is the point. And if there's an issue, it's straight to that. And that's not my preferred way to interact. I like to get to know my colleagues on a personal level, but I have to adjust my relationship expectation with that boss. Authenticity plays in here too. Be authentic and vulnerable, even when it's difficult. If you're working with a group on a project or maybe a new policy and you don't agree with a part of it, be authentic and voice those concerns. Stay true to what you believe, because when you model this, you are encouraging others to do the same. Of course, respect. Treat others with respect and value their input and perspectives. Now, sometimes pride can get in the way of this. For example, let's say that you have worked on a project for months and you have thought of every single angle. Then, when you present, a colleague has a better idea, a better way to do it. Don't let your pride get in the way. Knowing what you expect from your work relationships is important because you can't lead and influence if you don't understand these expectations. So we're going to go into our first breakout room. And remember what I said about trying to maximize this time together. I want you all to discuss what your work relationship expectations are. Additional examples can be commonality, acceptance, reliability, open communication. There are so many. I'm going to have you in the groups for 7 minutes. And while you're in the group, select someone who can report out on what your group's top 2 relationship expectations are. And if you don't want to talk, because I know some people don't like that, you can always write in the chat for your group. And I'm certain that we are going to hear some themes, but also some expectations that we may not have thought about. So we're going to go ahead and put you in those groups now. All right. Is everyone back?
Not yet.
No.
Zoom gives everyone about like a 60-second
Got
wrap
it.
up. So that's good to know. All right, everyone should be back.
Okay. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for taking the breakout room seriously. I really appreciate it. So, okay, group 1. Someone can either unmute or if you're more comfortable, put it in the chat. Tell me what your top 2 relationship expectations are. In Brooklyn, you may have been in group 1. Transparency and pulse taking, like checking in for a better personal understanding. I love that. I think that's wonderful. What about the next group?
I actually don't know what group we were in. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. Do you know what your groups were?
Yeah, Anna, Brittany, and I were in a group, and we actually chose transparency as well, and then accountability to go along with
Yes,
that.
accountability is great. Thank you. And what about the last group that we haven't heard from?
Oh, I think that's our group. So we had our 2 were mutual respect and communication. So really, kind of having that mutual respect for, everyone, and then being able to kind of communicate what's going on and how it's going on, and making sure that those things don't affect other people, or at least if they do, that they're communicated.
I love that. And the thing about transparency and open communication is, it really stops everyone just thinking what's going on in their head without really knowing, and then that can spiral and cause more issues. So that's great. Well, thank you all. Slide to go here. All right. Let's talk about what you are bringing to the table. Because in order to be a leader, you have to learn to lead yourself. So we all have barriers that prevent us from considering ourselves leaders. It can be a lack of knowledge about the subject, or it can be a lack of knowledge about how to lead and influence, because it can be intimidating. But to be a leader, you really have to shift from that know-it-all mindset to that learn-it-all mindset. Embrace the discomfort of not knowing. That really takes the pressure off of you to know all of the answers. If somebody asks me something that I don't know, I always just say, I really don't know, but let me find out and I'll get back to you. And in all the times that I have said that, no one has ever balked at that, because people really do appreciate honesty. Maybe you're trying to influence someone that is in a position higher than yours. And we all know the feeling of our ideas and our thoughts not being heard. Several years ago, I worked in a really large department, and we had some, let's say, strong personalities that just absolutely dictated every single meeting. And it was kind of hard to get a word in edgewise. But truthfully, I just didn't feel confident or knowledgeable enough to speak up. But when it came time that I had a good idea, I made sure that I took the time to really gather my information so that I could make that suggestion confidently. I even had it written down on a Post-it note what my main thoughts were, so that if I got nervous or interrupted, I kind of had my thoughts down for clarity. And that really helped me because I felt knowledgeable, and it was in order to break that barrier in order to be heard by my peers. Now, attitudes can blind you to important objective information. Maybe you feel like it's not your job to influence your coworkers or your boss. Well, really, that's an outdated mindset, because if you want to be a leader, no matter what your position is, you have to be willing to lead by example, and you have to be willing to lead your peers. The other day, a friend of mine was telling me about a colleague. They are in a very deadline results driven department, meaning that if they don't hit their goals, they don't get to keep their job. And so several of the members of the department are struggling with their goals. And the one colleague said, "Well, I hit my goal, so I'm done." Now just take a minute and think about that. Wouldn't it have been great if she would have said, "Well, I hit my goal, and now I want to work with some of my colleagues to make sure that they hit their goals"? Because after all, a rising tide lifts all boats. And she kind of has that not my job mentality, and it's not going to serve her well. When you do a favor for someone that you care about, maybe a family member or a friend, do you spend time thinking about how they're going to pay you back? No, but sometimes it's different, and we feel that way at work. And why is that? None of us like to fail, and we definitely don't want to come back from Vegas with a few coins in our hand, although it's happened to me. But acknowledging our feelings and our fears takes the sting and the power out of it. So, for instance, fear of the reaction. It is nerve-wracking to wait for a reaction. This is something we all struggle with. When I'm facilitating, especially in person, maybe I ask a question to the room and it's dead silent. That's nerve-wracking. But I remember that silence doesn't mean that people aren't listening, and it certainly doesn't mean that they're not paying attention. Although, yes, we need to think about the reaction and we need to be aware of what it might be. Worrying and fretting about it is a barrier. Our brains are hardwired to see uncertainty as a risk or a threat. And it is psychologically normal to feel stress when we're faced with an unfamiliar situation. And this is especially true for you all because you're high achievers and you have built your career on doing the right thing. Also, fear of failing. Failing happens, all right? And we have to learn from it. Failure is a mindset. So accept that you're going to make mistakes. I'm going to share a really vulnerable story with you all. In 2021, I quit my fundraising job that I had been in for 10 years to pursue a dream of mine, which was working at Salesforce. I worked countless hours to obtain the Ranger status on their online program. And if you haven't heard of that, it is essentially classes that you take online on their products, their services, their culture, all about the company as a whole. And then it's broken down into mini quizzes. And so after you read a unit, then you take this mini quiz and you earn a badge. You have to have 100 badges to be a Ranger. I interviewed for 13 positions. I made the final round for 3, of which I had to prepare and present different presentations for. I wrote 2 blog posts on LinkedIn, one that was titled Salesforce, You Should Take a Chance on Me. And it was read and shared by hundreds of people. And I had a lot of Salesforce people share it as well. I had countless virtual coffee chats in order to network with people. And at the end of the day, after all that networking, interviewing, writing different cover letters and resumes, I did not get any of the jobs. Not one. And I was crushed. I was embarrassed. After all, I had put everything on the line. I had quit my job to pursue this dream. But failure is a mindset. And I had to pick myself up, dust myself off, and move forward. Yes, it was a difficult setback, but I couldn't let it stop me. So I tried something and it didn't work, and that's okay. It wasn't meant to be. And so instead of feeling embarrassed, I'm proud of all the hard work I put into that. It was just time for me to set a new goal. Now, there are other barriers, such as losing control, lack of confidence, creating and managing that perfect work-life balance. But the great thing about acknowledging what your barriers are is that once you know what they are, you can change it, you can work around it, you can flip it, but it's so important that you know what they are. So we're going to jump back into another breakout room. Again, designate someone who can report out. And I want you all to say what your group's cohesive top 1 or 2 barriers. For example, another barrier I have is worrying about what other people are going to think of me. And this is something that I sort of have to fight every single day, which is why it's important that I know it's a barrier for me. Remember that acknowledging and knowing these barriers allows you to work around them. So let's put you back in groups for 7 minutes again. And then after that, we'll come back and regroup. So talk about what your barriers are. Great. Welcome back, everyone. Okay, so I would love to hear some of the barriers that you all discussed. So which group maybe wants to start and share?
I'll go ahead for my group. I think we came up with our top 2. And our top 2 were service providers and like sharing the same goals as the people that you're helping, maybe. So we know that can be a barrier oftentimes, and then also physical barriers. Was it like a bit when like distance or being further away from the source or place that you're helping out.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. What about another group?
I can share for my group. Alex, Brooklyn, Paul, and I talked about kind of internal barriers that we discussed, like imposter syndrome that we have, as well as like capacity or like burnout, compassion fatigue that might also be a barrier for them.
Yes, thank you. Imposter syndrome is very big. I apologize for coughing. My entire family had the flu last week, the 101 fever, the whole 9 yards. So if I cough, I apologize. Okay, what about another group? There's one group left. Knowing the terminology for all of the agencies and being able to acknowledge it to move forward rather than making assumptions. Excellent. That's great. Thank you. All right. So now we're going to work together to understand the hand you were dealt. And don't we all wish we had the hand that was in this photo? So we know what our values are. We know what our barriers are. So let's go ahead and go all in. Today, in order to learn to influence and lead, we're going to work through this model. And this model is created, it's called the Cohen and Bradford model. And it was created by academics Alan Cohen and David Bradford, both leadership experts. It was actually in their 2005 book, Influence Without Authority, which is an excellent book and one that I highly recommend. Now, I really like this model because I think it has clear and defined steps for us to follow. So first, we're going to start by assuming everyone is a potential ally. Then we're going to clarify goals and priorities. We're going to diagnose the world of the other person. We're going to identify relevant currencies, which is my favorite part of today's discussion. Then we're going to clarify that relationship. And then we're going to get to talking about influencing and leading through give and take. So wouldn't it be great if we all started by assuming the very best in everyone with no preconceived notions? And it's true. Every single one of us have to deal with difficult people. But in order to lead and influence, you have to let all past notions go. And you have to start fresh, assuming that everyone is an ally. Now, I know you may think that's easier said than done, but this is going to make a huge difference in your relationships. So first, find a connection. You really can't lead if your colleagues don't feel like you have some sort of a connection. Now, this can be as simple as recognition. For instance, do you always say hello when you get into the office? How are you? Anything like that. How are you feeling? If they were sick the day before, that personal recognition goes a long way. Use your active listening skills. Where are they coming from? And then speak to what you hear. Is there something maybe in their office or in their Zoom background that you can relate to? Maybe they're an IU or a Purdue fan. Maybe their background tells you something, or maybe in their office they have a collection of some sort. Look for something relatable and go into this assuming that you have common goals. You can't lead from where you are if you gossip about other coworkers or hold grudges. If you want to lead and influence, you really have to start with a clean slate. Those active listening skills, that listen more, talk less, something that I personally work on. I tend to be a reactor. And because I know that one of my barriers is worrying about what others are going to think of me, I maybe don't hear the message because I'm too busy focusing on what my response is going to be. So this is something that I constantly work on. But you can't lead if you don't start with a clean slate, assuming that everyone is your ally. Diagnosing the world of the other person, figuring out what's in their hand. Now, this is about taking step one a little bit further and not just assuming that someone is your ally, but taking that time to figure out what problems that they're facing and if you have a solution. Now, it seems like there's two types of people: those who share way too much and those who share nothing at all. We all know people that share every single solitary detail of their life. And when you have those people, it is very easy for you to find commonality with them. On the flip side, we all know people who don't share anything at all except the task at hand. They don't want to share any personal details. And that does make it a little bit difficult to determine their worldview and their values. Except if you think about it, they actually are telling you loud and clear. They value their work, and that's really what they want to focus on. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that they don't value their personal life and their family, but it does mean that they are task-oriented and they want to keep that distance between their personal and their professional life. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's something that you need to understand about that person. So when we're thinking about diagnosing the world of the other person, what do you think is worrying them? Do they have difficult deadlines? Would you feel overwhelmed if you were in their position? Now, this is about empathy, not fixing problems. Do you notice that you're more likely to help your peers and your friends at the office, but not necessarily your supervisor? So, why are we more likely to do that? Well, I think we all know why, but it is something we need to work on in changing that mindset. Think about how they're measured at work. Think about their primary responsibilities. Do they have a lot of pressure? What is the culture of their department? If they're in a really toxic department, that's important for you to know. Are they under tremendous pressure from their boss? We really don't do this enough, thinking about what the other person is facing, but it's crucial. This is actually an exercise I do if I'm having a difficult time with someone, even my son or another family member, not just colleagues. I literally take out a blank sheet of paper and I just jot down what pressures I think they're facing and what I think is worrying them. And I find it really helpful because it can change my mindset and it helps me come in with no preconceived notions. Now, I am a list and a goal maker, and I do not like when I'm given a deadline of whenever. You know, when someone hands you a project and they say, well, in between other projects, if you have time, really it's whenever, there's no set deadline on that. Well, I need clear dates and deadlines in order to feel like I'm being productive. So, goals are important when you're leading and influencing. You need to give exact, specific goals. It needs to be specific because goals are often too general. When asked what you want, don't say, I really need you to try to be more efficient on this project. Say, I need you to have this completed by Thursday at noon, along with an outline of exactly what you would like done in that project. You can do this even if someone is just helping you with a project. If you're working on a big project and a colleague offers help, still set goals and priorities. Thank you so much for helping. If you could get this to me by Friday at noon, that would be great. But of course, be realistic in those expectations. Goals and expectations are meaningless if they're not attainable. If you give someone a nondescript goal and timeline, you are not influencing them. Focus on measuring results. Have you ever been in a situation where maybe you didn't prioritize your tasks the way that your boss thought you should? Maybe you had a ton on your plate and you did what you thought was the most important task, only to find out that your boss doesn't agree. And that can be really frustrating. Wouldn't it be easier if you knew what was priority 1, 2, and 3? I used to work with a colleague who always handled this beautifully. We were a really small staff, and in our weekly meetings, she would then recap her work by saying, this week, my main priorities are project A, B, and C. Is that the priority list that you all were thinking? And that's always stuck with me. And I really try to do that in my one-on-ones because that way you're on the same page as your boss. It's also important that you take responsibility when goals are not met because you can't be a leader if you're not viewed as someone who can take responsibility. Own up to those mistakes. Don't cover them up because this is about leading by example. And we don't really respect leaders who can't take responsibility. And without respect, you can't influence. So now we're going to talk about currencies, which is the foundation of leading and influencing. Now, we all value different currencies and we weigh them differently. So you are likely going to resonate with a little bit of all of these currencies, but some are going to stand out and be more important to you than others. So why are these important? Well, understanding what you value and then understanding what others value is really the cornerstone of leading and influencing. And often being a leader is about trading in these currencies. So the first one is inspiration-related currencies. And this really relates to all of you because it's your desire to make a difference in the world. You love creating an exciting, bold vision, and you have strong commitment. It derives from your desire to make a difference and add meaning, not just to your life, but to the world. Vision is the grandest currency, and it's about creating excitement and having a positive attitude. We all want to be part of a vision that is exciting and challenging. It's also about mentoring and teaching. Many feel fulfilled by training and teaching others. They see it as a way to give back and share their knowledge. My husband is a professor, and teaching is just in his veins. He thrives on it. Now, some people, they dread training and teaching, and that's okay. Collaboration is also part of the inspiration related currencies. Do you love to collaborate? The highest performing organizations promote collaboration between individuals, teams, and departments. But to be collaborative, you have to influence others to see value in their ideas and their requests. Inspiration can be a magnet, pulling people as opposed to pushing people away. The next is task-related currencies. Now, this comes from the ability to contribute to others accomplishing their work. It's about being a problem solver. It's about resources. Now, the first thing we think of when we say resources is money, but it does not have to be monetary. It can be people, space, equipment. Maybe that's trading equipment from one department to another, or borrowing equipment, or time. We all want what is needed to complete a task. It can be just giving additional time to complete a project, or providing direct assistance to a colleague. Most people want to be challenged. A lot of us don't want to do the same task every day. So look for ways to challenge with new projects and problem solving. Because by fostering innovation and resources for each other, you're being a leader. We all have projects that we hate doing. For instance, maybe the budgeting. I'm not a numbers person. My husband is actually a math professor, and I'm the person that calls him from the hair salon and says, how much should my tip be? So budgeting would not be for me. But if someone in your department loves numbers, then maybe you could trade projects. How can you work with each other to assist each other? Assistance can also be one department helping one another. When I worked at the college, we had to put together these thick binders, really about this thick, for the professors every year. And it was the academic records job, but it was an unrealistic expectation for the 3 people in that department to do. So what they would do is they would rent out the conference room for the whole week. They would lay out all of the materials in order, and then all of us would sort of just cycle in when we had time, or we would set time to go in there and help put these binders together. Now, we listened to music while we did that. We talked. It was a really great bonding experience. And I got to meet a lot of different colleagues in a lot of different departments. And we were all about just assisting this other department. And that is the beauty in leading by example, because you're willing to go that extra mile to help anyone with any task. Sharing valuable information is also another form of this currency. Do you know a tip to help a project move along more smoothly? Share it. Look for opportunities to share with others. Position-related currencies. This comes from enhancing yours or others' position within the organization. This is about being given a chance to prove yourself and gain the attention of higher-ups. Reputation. Now, we all want to be seen as someone who is reliable and a promotable team player. And good press can pave the way for a lot of opportunities. This currency is also evident in helping preserve someone's reputation. For example, maybe coming to the defense of someone who is being unjustly blamed for a project setback. Advancement. Do you want to advance in your career? Is this a currency that's important to you? And if it's not, and maybe you are closer to retirement, you love your position, this is where you want to be, there's nothing wrong with that. So Advancement means a lot of different things. Advancement can also mean some professional development so that you are advancing in your current role, not just advancing into a higher role. Networking is one of the strongest forms of this currency, and this is about sharing contacts with other people. So, helping individuals expand their own networks is an incredible way to help others. Recognition. Are you more likely to work on a project when you know that you're going to be recognized? How do you think your colleagues want to be recognized? Now, there is no right answer to this. In fact, some people would rather hide under their desk than to be publicly recognized. So take the time to understand not only how you want to be recognized, but how your coworkers want to be recognized. And when in doubt, ask. I prefer to be recognized by my direct supervisor. I do not want it in a company email. I don't want it shared with the department. I'm happy with a quick email or a Teams message just saying that I did something well. But now you may prefer public recognition, and that is understandable if you feel that you're not getting the recognition that you need. That's why we all have different preferences. So I encourage you to think about how you want to be recognized and then ask your colleagues what their preferences are. Relationship-related currencies. This is my favorite and one that I resonate with the most. Now, this has much more to do with strengthening relationships rather than accomplishing project tasks. It's about inclusion and that personal connection. Some value close relationships at work, but as we've said, others can view that as a distraction. And you're going to learn that by actively listening. But you can always share a sense of humor to make difficult projects fun, and that will enhance relationships. That emotional connection, understanding, listening, sympathy. Recognize the value of listening. When you observe that a colleague is stressed or going through a difficult time, take the time to offer them a kind gesture, a word, a note, maybe bring them in a coffee tomorrow. Look for ways to appreciate them. Now, maybe the organization doesn't take time to send any kind of cards or any kind of encouragement when someone is going through something difficult. Well, that doesn't mean that you can't, and you can do that and lead by example. Now, you may wonder what the difference is between inspirational related currencies and the relationship currencies. The main difference is that inspirational currencies are about the overall vision and ideas, where relationships is about those meaningful and personal relationships. So I'm going to be vulnerable again, and I'm going to share something with you because this currency is really important to me. In January, my mom passed away in my house, actually in my arms, and she had been living with us for 6 months while she battled cancer. And during the whole process, I was extremely transparent about where I was working because I do work remote. So I would say, I'm working from the chemo office today. I'm working from a scan today. She was in the hospital a few times. I'm working from the hospital today. I was always up front on my calendar about, I have to take her to get this lab done today. I always made sure that my supervisors knew exactly where I was. And she died really suddenly. She was actually responding really, really well to her treatment. And it was completely unexpected. And it was devastating. And so I took the allowed 3 days of bereavement. And I did share with my boss what happened, that she was at home with me and that she was in my arms. And after my 3 days of bereavement, when I came back, very, very few people mentioned it. The organization didn't even send me a card. It really hurt my feelings. And for an organization of under 100 people, I only heard from 3. So we are all so busy at work. And sometimes we forget to slow down and develop those relationships. Now, of course, that needs to be done to your comfort level, but nothing stops us from offering sympathy, encouragement, or support. Understanding, active listening, and being aware of these stresses that your colleagues are facing, both personally and professionally, will go a long way. Slide to advance here. Okay, we're going to go, I know, into another breakout room, but I love for you all to have the opportunity to talk with each other. So I'll put this in the chat too, so you guys remember, but talk about these currencies for a little bit and talk about how they relate to you and which ones maybe don't relate to you. And let's do 10 minutes this time so that you all have time to refresh your coffee as well as having time in your breakout rooms. So go through each one of these, the inspiration, task related, position, and relationships. I think everyone should be back. Is that right?
Yes, a couple more seconds. Looks like people are slowly
Okay,
jumping back in.
thank you.
Everyone should be back now.
Okay. So who wants to share about their discussion? Did your group share the same currencies? Did you have someone that resonated to different currencies?
Sharon again. I guess I'll go first.
Thanks.
My group we were really consistent, all task related currency. So that's something that we clicked on right away and that we
Great.
talked about the whole time.
And did that surprise you?
Oh, I won't say it surprised me. It just from like our talks, it didn't seem like we really like were into the personal currency quite yet. So like task related was like what we really gravitated to, that we just have deadlines. Like we like to have like deadlines and specific tasks to go to.
Perfect. Thank you. Who else? All right, I'm having that fear of reaction. Anybody else want to share? Okay, here's one. It sounds like the relationships for us, like collaboration, feedback, support, the ways we like to receive recognition differed, and the opportunity to just do our work. Thank you. It's really interesting when you talk to your colleagues about how do you like to be recognized. It shows you a lot about how to best interact and support each other. Okay, now we're going to talk about tipping our dealer. So this is really about gratitude and saying thank you. For me, I want to say thank you for coming to this workshop. We have just a little bit of time left and I have a few more slides, but it means so much to me that you would take time out of your day to come and spend the morning and listen to what I have to offer. When you are complimenting someone, make sure that you give examples, not just blanketed compliments. Make sure that they're meaningful and that it's specific. So for you to chew on, here are some incredible facts about the power of gratitude. A study at IU used MRIs to measure brain activity about feelings that were induced by acts of gratitude. And they found that the positive effects of gratitude last for months after the actual act. And thanking employees can increase productivity. Researchers at Pennsylvania discovered that grateful leaders motivate their employees to be much more productive. And in one study of fundraising calls, which I had to do at IU, so I know those are difficult, employees who were thanked made 50% more calls. Generosity is contagious. And when leaders show generosity, appreciation, and gratitude, there's a ripple effect. And showing gratitude towards someone is inspiring them to thank other people. And remember, you do not need anyone's permission to give recognition, to show appreciation, and to show respect. So now that we've worked through the model, it's time to place our bet. So how do I get what I want? What is my currency? What is their currency? So, for example, I know that relationships are a very important currency to me, but if it is not an important currency for the person that I am trying to influence, I have to be willing to let that go. Ask for what you want and be willing to do the exchange based on the other person's currency. Be prepared for a negotiation. Make sure that both of you win. Show respect, understanding, and empathy. And by all means, show your gratitude and be ready to give back. You see, persuasion works because the person understands the benefit of accepting it. If they don't, if they don't see the benefits of it, then they don't see any reason to negotiate with you. So it's really important that you understand the currencies so that you can go into this negotiation having all of your cards in a row. So determine what's the issue that you want to influence and ask for what you want. Determine what it is you think they value. What are you willing to trade? Maybe it's redefining work responsibilities or redesigning office location, flex hours, a time exchange, additional compensation. These are all examples that are going to require a currency exchange. Start with what you know, what's important to you. Then think about what their currency is. Trade in what they value and always be open and honest. So here's a little example. Peter has been working in his department for 2 years, but he's really only been involved in small projects, and he really wants to take on a larger project to have some visibility to the higher ups for advancement. However, he doesn't have a lot of confidence in his boss, let's call her Rachel, because she's not really involved in his day-to-day, and they don't interact regularly. They really don't have much of a relationship at all. The problem is that while Peter has been busy working on all these smaller projects, Rachel has also been really busy. So he's worried that he won't have her support, maybe because she just doesn't understand the work that he does. Now, he knows that Rachel could be an ally because they have always had positive interactions. And of course, he's starting assuming that she's going to be an ally. He then takes the time to diagnose her world, and he realizes that she really is under tremendous pressure from management. So he believes that her currency is position related. He then comes up with his exchange. He will offer to advise Rachel of his approach towards all of the smaller projects he's assigned over a 15-minute catch-up weekly. He makes an agenda and he sticks to that 15 minutes. And then in return, he's going to ask for that opportunity to work on a larger project once he has developed a relationship with her. In the meantime, he documents any feedback he receives from her, and he has demonstrated how he's acted on them. Then after a few months, he has his first large project. So my advice as we leave the glittering lights of Las Vegas: start preparing. Be tuned into your colleagues and your stakeholders in the organization. Concentrate on building good relationships. Help others when you can. It feels good to help your colleagues, and you'll find that they're often going to return the favor. Along the way, you are going to build a better, longer lasting, mutually satisfying relationship, one that you can rely on in the future. As leaders, we cannot control the degree of change, uncertainty, and complexity that we're going to face. However, by using the steps that we've discussed today, you will improve your ability to continually learn, grow, and influence. I love this quote by Dr. Joyce Brothers. Listening, not imitation, is the sincerest form of flattery. If you want to influence someone, listen to what he says. And remember, action beats anxiety every single time. Thank you so much for having me this morning and letting me share this with all of you. And if you have any questions, please feel free to pop them in the chat.
Thank you so much, Andrea.
Thank you.
I'm going to give folks some time to turn the airwaves over to everyone else if you have any questions or want to say anything. I'll leave some space for that for a second.